always has to be a shot at somebody.
No.
They're never clean.
They have to run. That's the only shot they have.
They do it for 82 games. We're about to find out.
He already has shown what he's capable of.
Did surprise me. I thought we were going to hang in there.
This makes me think that we do need to be humble.
I actually think you're the only one who deserved that.
Hey, Barry Manning here. Welcome to a Tuesday edition of the Garden Report. After a great game between the Celtics and the Pistons, they end up losing that one, second in a row, 112-105. Brian Barrett's here from the Ringer to talk about that and the last week or two for the Celtics. Even honestly, we just talked over on Brian's podcast Off the Fight. Not a lot going on in terms of games for the Celtics right now. They just aren't playing many. And so 2 losses in a row is like a 10-day span for them right now. So I'm not panicking certainly right now, especially relative to the expectations that we had coming into this year. But these last two, especially with the shooting, did make me a little concerned about the sustainability of the start of this year.
Yeah, it's interesting because 2 of their worst 4 shooting games from 3-point territory have come in the last 2. Pistons 10 of 39, 25.6%, and the Bucks was 14 of 49, 28.6%. And I do think more so maybe than any other team in the league, Bobby, they need consistency. And this NBA Cup has screwed up their rhythm. I'm blaming it on Adam Silver and the NBA Cup because the Celtics were cruising. They were playing unbelievable basketball. And then even winning that game in Toronto, I think is no small feat because it's a 3:00 game in Toronto. Toronto's a fun city. You come out and you beat that team, and you beat Cleveland recently. I know they're struggling, but look at all the teams they beat recently. And just like going from Sunday to Thursday, right? And then Thursday to Monday, and now you're going Monday to Friday, a team that relies on 3-point consistency. It just feels like, to me, like that hurts the Celtics more than a lot of other teams. In their wins, they're 40.2% from deep, 5th. In their losses, they're 30.4%, 29th. Sort of tells the story of the past couple games. But yeah, that was a fun game against the Pistons. I'm sort of upset with the way the schedule has been dictated by this NBA Cup.
Yeah, and I'm not going to blame the schedule completely here. Specifically, I mean, Bucks came into that Thursday game 1-7 without Giannis this year. Win, obviously, over Boston, and then lose by 45 to Brooklyn in the following night. So that one was pretty rough. You have those nights every once in a while, but without Giannis, and given the guys who killed you in that one, Kyle Kuzma, who I kind of forgot about going into that game, and then Kevin Porter Jr., who had the triple-double. Bobby Portis was just lighting them up. So the defensive concerns right now with this group. The offense has actually been great as they've gone toward more small ball. And I think Derek White's gotten going over the last week or two here. And Jalen certainly has been the engine for them there. And that continued in this one. Tough ending for him with the free throw misses and some other lapses. Rough turnover night for him too, particularly the ones that he did give away. Celtics don't lose the turnover battle a lot. But they did here, and it hurt them, particularly their late game execution. And their late game crunch time results have gotten better of late, but they're still not exceptional in terms of what you want to see when they are going to go down the wire in a lot of these games against good to great teams. And this was another rough 3-4 minutes to close this one, really on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, well, it's 106-102, and the best player currently on the team misses a pair of free throws. And unfortunately, he's 7 of 14 in the game. Since he made the complaint about getting to the free throw line more, he's now up to 9th in free throws per game. So that's a good thing. Just got to be able to convert when you get there. Yeah, the offense at the end of the game did not look great. And it kind of brings me back to what they've done, like their pet plays over the past few years. Well, those are out of the equation right now, right? And I'm not blaming this on Jalen specifically, but what they always used to like to run is let's dictate a mismatch for Jason Tatum. So whether that's Derek White screening for Jason Tatum so Tatum can get the small on him, or it's Derek White bringing the ball up and Tatum setting the screen for Derek White, it felt like that was one of the best plays that they could go to at the end of the games. And Jalen's shot making has been incredible this year. 30% of his shots are 2s away from the rim, and he's shooting north of 51% of those shots, which is just insane. I mean, that's like Kawhi Leonard, but it's not quite Durant at his peak, but that's like Kawhi Leonard numbers when he really had it rolling back in the day. So he's been incredible. I just feel like they don't really have consistency down the stretch of what they want to do schematically at the end of these games. And a lot of it is just, hey, can Jalen make shots down the stretch? And I don't even think it's a Missoula thing. I think it's just all these guys are sort of in new territory. Jalen, this is his first time being the guy compared to Tatum. Derek White's in the 2 role. Peyton Pritchard's in the 3rd spot, and he has not had the best month of December. But yeah, unfortunate. And look, Detroit, everyone expected they were going to be a really good team this year. Have they exceeded expectations? Probably a little bit, but Cade Cunningham is playing like an MVP candidate this year as well. So you knew that they were going to be able to get good shots down the stretch.
Yeah, and the big one, the icer, was over Derek White. Obviously, Jordan Walsh guarded Cade for a lot of this game. Ugo Gonzalez as well. Both of them hit foul trouble, which I'm sure took them out of their rhythms, played some part in going with Anthony Simons over them late. But Simons does close this game, doesn't shoot great from 3 over 5. Got a few important shots around the rim late in the game as the comeback push began. But it's not a huge second guess out of this game. I think you could probably name 2 or 3 bigger ones that you'd like to have back here. But given the success that they've had playing with Walsh down the stretch, particularly a guy who has actually played a tiny bit of center for them, screening on offense and defensively playing a couple different positions when they go small, I feel like he has to be a staple for you at this point, given what he's done. And I feel like they overthought that a little bit late. I don't know if the game goes differently. I don't know if you get more stops on Cade over the final few possessions there. He certainly took Walsh full court with a couple minutes to go there right before Walsh came out and got a 3 off. And he was scoring in a bunch of different ways, as Joe said after this game. But I would have liked to have seen what Walsh could do late. And a weird game in that you couldn't get him many shot attempts here. I guess just the foul trouble and sporadic rotation minutes for him here threw him off.
Yeah, and I think, too, you mentioned just getting Walsh out there. Obviously, he's been one of the best on-ball defenders in the league. We've seen what he's done to Maxey. He's covered Karl Anthony Towns. He covers centers. He covers point guards. He covers wings. As you said, he had Cade the bulk of that game. I know Cade had a really productive night, but he's one of the best players in the league at this point. So that's sort of expected. But going back to what you said about Simons, it's just been weird. So that's why I thought it was weird that Missoula would actually close with Simons, because I was in the camp at the beginning of the season when the Celtics were struggling. You just got to play him more. You just got to get him more minutes, because this is a guy that can score you 20 points per game. He's done that multiple times in Portland. And then I was thinking, all right, well, is it that difficult to convert to coming off the bench? Primarily, he's been a starter the majority of his career. I thought, all right, he's not going to be a great defender. We all know that. I mean, at the beginning of the season, what he said that he has to try harder, it's like, all right, that's kind of acknowledging that you're not a great defender. But I thought, not at the very least, but I thought he could be like a version of what Lou Williams and what Jamal Crawford did for the majority of their careers, where they won a bunch of 6th Man of the Year awards, even if maybe there was a year in there where Iguodala probably should have won it because of what he does individually in terms of everything he brings to the table. But I thought that's what Simons was going to be. He was going to come off the bench and he was going to be able to heat up, but we've only seen it sporadically this season. So that's why that is a weird decision not to go with the guy that has been so good defensively and go with Simons, when for the majority of the season, it feels like the coach doesn't really trust Simons. And this isn't an indictment on Missoula, but how many games do you look down his game log and it's like, he's in single digits again? Wait, how many minutes did he play? So I just feel like he's the one guy on this team, and Hauser to a lesser extent. And I think part of it with Hauser is he was so good playing with Tatum. He knew exactly where he was going to get his shots. His numbers obviously down, had the ankle situation the other night. But my bigger point is just with Simons, he just has never looked comfortable here. He just hasn't.
No, and I wonder what that's going to mean for him as the trade deadline approaches here. I don't know what they could do with him potentially, given the lack of a market for him going back to the summer. And I don't see one emerging for him around the league. I thought at Dallas, they feel like they're going the other way with their season. Brooklyn, always an option, but you're going to have to give up picks to do that. So it feels like he's just going to be part of this thing, and they have to think of ways to get him involved more creatively. And it's interesting because going into that game, Pritchard was questionable with a neck injury of some sort, neck spasm. And you're thinking like, all right, is this a chance for Simons to step up, maybe start, play a bigger role? And you're probably starting Hauser there, or Ugo, or someone else. Like the things they want right now, lineup and rotation wise, are on-ball defense, offensive rebounding, and just a little bit of shooting, an acceptable amount of shooting, which is what Ugo's given you, Walsh is giving you. Walsh is giving you outstanding shooting. You wonder how long that's going to last. And then Mineout's been good from three, and Shireman, very limited opportunities, has hit his as well. So that's another thing you're looking at right now, and that's the conversation I want to have here, Brian, is how sustainable is the start of the season for this group? What's going to last? What isn't? That's the theme of the show tonight here on the Garden Report after the Celtics lose a tough one to the Pistons. Before we have that conversation, I want to shout out our good friends over at Prize Picks. And there's a lot going on over on Prize Picks during the holiday season. You know that. Another thing to point out this week, and this is what I love about Prize Picks, always free squares going on over there. And they got a great max discount on Anthony Joshua. There's a fight this week going on. Anthony Joshua, more than 0.5 total punches landed. That's Friday by 9 o'clock. You can claim that. Go over there and you get a discount on Anthony Joshua, only needing more than 0.5 total punches landed in the boxing match against Jake Paul. Just add another player to your lineup, and if your picks hit, you can cash in. This week, it's the special max discount promotion live on the board right now, so you can go over there, get that now, build your lineup with Anthony Joshua, just needing one punch, alongside anyone else. Steph Curry, great play right now on the football field. If you're loving what Drake May is doing, you can mix and match leagues, which is what I love about Prize Picks. But the name of the game over there is two or more players, pick more or less on their stat projections, and you have your daily fantasy team over there. You can make it a weekly thing with football continuing to go on right now. I know a lot of full season leagues are wrapping up. You can build a new team every day over there for one game or for the entire weekend. There's just a lot of great ways to play over on Prize Picks. And right now, again, holiday season going on. You got bowl games, basketball matchups, playoff pushes, all happening at once while you and I are making decisions every day, what gifts to buy, what to eat, which game to watch. There's one place where it feels good to be right, and that's over on Prize Picks. Some of the features going on right now, early payouts. If your lineup gets off to a hot start, you may now have the option to cash out on those winnings before the game even finishes. And if your team's cooked, as I mentioned, the full season fantasy teams that you all have, you can build a new one every week over on Prize Picks. Love the flex play where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And for the biggest payouts, go for the power play. No matter how you play, Prize Picks is a great way to put your takes to the test. Again, more or less on two or more player stats. That's 3-pointers, touchdowns, anything you can think of over there, points, assists, rebounds on the basketball court. Just download the app today, Prize Picks, and use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. So, what's sustainable, Brian? What isn't from the start as you look at what's been an outstanding, all things considered, first quarter of this season for the Celtics?
Yeah, well, it feels like at this point, this is who Jalen's going to be, right? And I'm not saying he's going to shoot the same percentage on those long mid-rangers I mentioned earlier where it's north of 51%, but he's shooting slightly above 36% from deep. Jalen's never been a great three-point shooter. That number is perfectly acceptable for me. He's getting to the free throw line even more, 9th in the NBA in that. So he's at 29 points per game, north of 29 points per game. He's right in between Jokic and Brunson. I think Jalen's going to continue to score. Even if that number comes down a little bit, he's going to finish the season averaging somewhere between 27 and 29 points per game. So I think that is real. And I didn't know if Jalen could take another step forward offensively. He clearly has. And clearly by the end of last season, he didn't have the lift on his jump shot that he had. And we've seen him shoot mid-range jumpers at a high level before. And the fact that he's attacking the basketball, I think that's massive. So I think that's real. The other guy that I would point out now is it does feel like Derek White is now, and I know it's been going on for a couple of weeks, but he's turned a corner. So this month, he's at 23.3 a game. He's hitting 38.6% of his threes. In the month of December, he's hit 27 threes, the most in the NBA. And the big thing to me about White is the 2-point numbers were so bad earlier this season. Pre-December, he's 52 of 123, 42.3%, 23 of 32 in December. That's 71.9%. So that's basically like the second best 2-point shooter compared to the last 2-point shooter. And he's not going to continue to shoot north of 70%. But I think Derek White is certainly back to the player that we expected him to be, where now he's used to this new role. So I think those two things are real. Derek White being back, Jaylen Brown being the player that he is. The fact that they're 18th in defense, I think that's kind of what I thought. I thought if they were a top 20 defense, that'd probably be pretty good for them. And the numbers since Keita came back, like pre-November, or not since he came back, but pre-December with Keita on the floor, they had a defensive rating south of 102, which is better than the Oklahoma City Thunder on the season. Now it's a little bit above 113 in the month of December. So I do wonder if teams are figuring out how to attack the Celtics better with Keita on the floor, but they don't give up corner threes and they don't give up attempts in the restricted area, despite the numbers in the restricted area not being good this month in terms of the percentage. They give the second fewest attempts in the restricted area this month. So I think the defense sort of is what it is at this point, although I do worry a little bit about teams taking Keita out of the paint. The question that I have is the offense after Derek White and Jaylen Brown, because I mentioned the 3-point numbers earlier, but the one guy that I'm concerned about a little bit right now is Pritchard, because Pritchard was so good earlier this season. And even that game on Monday starts off, him and Jaylen combined for 20 of the first 25. He had 10 points in like the first, 8 minutes of the game. He has 2 the rest of the way. And Pritchard really, where he found it was he finally got his 3 going in November, 41.2% on 8.1 attempts. This month is only 6 games, but 8.3 attempts, 30%. And his 2-point numbers have really dipped off. So 2s outside the restricted area this month, 13 of 31, 41.9%. Pre-December, he's basically the best guy in the league, 54 of 90, 60%.
You know,
obviously
that earth a little bit.
Yeah, obviously that wasn't going to continue, but for it to drop nearly, north of 18 percentage points is kind of alarming to see. And I do want, this is the one question I have about Pritchard, because he was so good to begin the season. Like last year, 6th man of the year, all that. But he's playing off a bunch of guys. Now he has to do a decent amount of the creation. And he's been really good in the 2-point game earlier. Like he bumps defenders off. He's got this nice little like pirouette move when he gets into the lane. He can kind of get to his step back 2-point game. But I do wonder now with what he did in November, if teams are like, oh, he isn't just this like spot up shooter, push it in transition guy. Like he's actually doing a lot of the creation. So I'm interested to see Pritchard over the next, I'd say 10 games or so, to see if those numbers come back up. Because now I do feel like, Bobby, teams have a better idea of who he is in this new Celtics or on this new Celtics team, because it's a totally different role than he was playing. And I think it honestly caught teams off guard. Not to say that he doesn't deserve a ton of credit for it, but I don't think teams like, wait, he drives to the basket a ton? He takes mid-range jump shots? I don't think teams are expecting that from Pritchard. And I think now it's not on top of the scouting report. Obviously, that's Jaylen. But I think it's a big part of the scouting report now is what to do with Peyton Pritchard.
Yeah, I'd be trapping a lot more against this team, honestly, on the ball whenever they're running pick and rolls, whenever they're trying to isolate, bring some extra pressure, because you want the Walshes and Keitas of the world to beat you if you're going up against Boston. And I haven't seen a ton of teams do that so far. I feel like the Pistons got a little more aggressive against Jaylen, and he was still able to have an outstanding game there. But there is a picture forming of how this Celtics team is going to get it done on any given night. And it's going to be a lot of Jaylen. It's going to be a lot of Pritchard, White. And then from there, you're wondering where you're getting those other points from. And that's why I think it is important to have Simons involved in some sense, not only if an injury strikes or you need some extra depth and productivity there. Part of my concern about this strong start is that you're 15-11 with full health and everything going your way in many aspects outside of the 3-point shooting to begin the year. So when things start to break wrong, and yes, they have won a couple of games without Keita, and they won a game in Cleveland without Derek. So they've passed that test in a few circumstances early where it's like, all right, can you be missing a guy or two and still win games? They've checked that box in 2 or 3 nights. But if you have a more extended absence among one of your key guys, I think Keita only missed 1, maybe 2 games with the ankle injury that he suffered. You can't afford to lose him at all right now. Feels like any game that you play without Jaylen would be a loss, save for the Wizards, which is the one game he did miss.
Yeah.
I worry about the scoring depth right now, the creation depth on this team. It's unbelievable that this group doing it the way that they have is one of the best offenses in the league. I looked after last night, a couple bad shooting nights, still 9th in effective field goal, still 15th in 3-pointer after coming up from the bottom of the league with a nice November from behind the arc. And they've just found a way to manufacture points by doing the little things. Even in this Detroit game, you get to the free throw line a little bit more. Your offensive rebounding. There's a lot of different things that you're doing right now to just ratchet up offense wherever you can. Forcing the issue defensively and turning that into offense, they're getting a little bit better at as they force more turnovers this year. So I love the way that they've manufactured a great offense. Is it a great offense? I think, I want to see another quarter of the season here to see how everything works itself out, because honestly, a lot of the individual players in this thing have rode massive highs, low lows. Jalen's been that only steady hand throughout. So that's one concern I have here, is just how this offense is going to sustain, how they're going to get consistent offensive creation as defenses start to adjust to them. And then, the other thing I'm thinking about here is the center situation, which I know we didn't talk about it a lot on the other pod. What would you have thought the record of this team, Brian, would be if going into the year we said, all right, you got all these centers here, you got this front court situation. Cater's going to be the only guy in the rotation out of the 4 centers. And Minot's going to be playing all the backup center minutes. And in this Detroit game, you're going to be playing Walsh at center a little bit, and you're going to be playing Ugo at center a little bit. Not only what is the record, but how's that Detroit game against Duren and Stewart going to go?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would have said is after the Knicks game, Joe, see what happens when you don't play double bigs against the Knicks. You actually you actually win, because he kept going back to double bigs after Pritchard went off in that one game. But yeah, I thought coming into
you're going to be talking about that forever.
Yeah, I'm never giving that up, man. I'm just so mad about it. But anyway, the center situation I thought coming into the season was one of, if not the worst in the league, of teams that are like actually trying to be decent. Now, maybe you could argue the Celtics, hey, look at all the guys they traded, but I still think they knew they have
them in
Jaylen
Indiana,
Brown.
who's a Miles Turner.
Yeah. Right. Like, I'm not talking about the terrible teams in the league that are trying to get in the sweepstakes for one of the top 3 picks in the draft. But outside of that, teams that are trying to win games, I thought it was going to be one of the worst situations in the NBA. What has happened is that has been accurate for the most part, except you have a real legitimate starting center. Like what I expected from Garza, what I expected from Boucher, and what I expected from Tillman outside of the occasional spot start that we saw, a couple of weeks ago. I didn't think you'd get much out of any of those 3 guys, and that's turned out to be the case. But I also didn't know that you were going to get this level of play on Akeda to the point where
every night.
It's crazy. And like he even had a play against Detroit where they kicked, it was like semi-transition, right? The first push didn't work. He's at the 3-point line. He gets it at the top of the 3-point line, dribbles and gets this massive dunk, and Bickerstaff takes a timeout after that where it's like this monstrous slam where he's dribbling to the basket. I know the majority of his work is at the basket, but what he's meant to this team defensively, to the point, Bobby, where when he rolled his ankle that game, I'm like, they're screwed. What are they going to do? Yep. Look, and I'm thinking to myself, I can't believe I'm having this conversation internally with myself that I'm this worried about Keita going down, but that's what he's meant to the team. And I think you have to look at the organization. How many guys have they done this with, right? I mean, you think about Sam Hauser developed into, and he's not had the best year, but he developed into one of the best shooters in the league, right? Look at what Luke Cornett did, right? Where Luke Cornett, everybody thought coming out of Vanderbilt, he's this stretch big. He was like the only guy on the team last year that didn't shoot threes, and he was great in his role, and now, of course, in San Antonio, right? Look at what Peyton Pritchard has become as a player. We just talked about Jordan Walsh. Like, Jordan Walsh is now a real member of this rotation where it's a massive win for the Celtics that it feels like, and I don't want, maybe I'll knock on wood here, I don't want to jinx it, but it feels like they actually hit on that draft pick, which prior to the season, I guess this goes back to the center rotation thing, because that's something that I was not assuming was going to happen. I thought out of the group, like Ugo, we hadn't really seen him play yet, and Shireman, I'm like, yeah, Walsh is probably just never going to click for him. And it has. So I think that's why the center position has been passable, is Keita is a legitimate bona fide starting center in the NBA and an above average starting center in the NBA, right? I'm not telling you he's elite, but he's certainly above average. A lot of teams would take him as their starter. And Jordan Walsh has turned out to be one of the better on-ball defenders in the league, and he can play up and guard centers, right? Like, that's changed where this team is at too. Like, his ability to guard guys like Karl Anthony Towns, not just Maxey and Donovan Mitchell and Cade Cunningham, but he can guard up too.
Yeah, for sure. So I think of the center situation. I think of the health that they've had, which has been an enormous blessing so far to be this available pretty much throughout your rotation at the beginning of a season and mostly throughout the schedule. You see a ton of injuries going on around the league, and obviously, knock on wood, you don't want to see any guys go down, but you do think in the back of your head that stuff's inevitable over the course of a long season. And this team isn't super well built to sustain that. Again, I'll give them some benefit of the doubt for winning those games where they've done it to this point. And then I look at the East right now, and they do have Miami on Friday. Miami's going to play Brooklyn first. I don't know how healthy Tyler Hero is right now, back to health. But they've been effective offensively up until the last 5 games they've lost here, where they haven't been able to score at all. So I don't know what to make of the East. I don't know what to make of the Heat, who in the 9th seed at this very moment, Brian, are 1 game back of the Celtics, who are up at like 4, tied for 4th or maybe even 3rd, half game back at 3rd. So the standings are so packed right now too that you have to think a couple swings, a bad week could drop you back into that play-in territory and having the conversations about whether or not this is going to be a playoff team here. I don't want to sound so doom and gloom coming out of 2 losses, especially after how they've started the season. I predicted that this team was going to exceed expectations this year. I'm still high on what they've done and the coaching and the grit and effort and all the little things that they've done to start this season strong. But I bring up the standings to ask this, and I know it's a little early for this conversation. Are they going to be able to say to ownership, we should stay above the luxury tax? We shouldn't subtract a few players here and there to try to, set yourself up financially for the future, save a couple bucks if that's even the motivation at this point. And much less say, ooh, we're actually looking to add a piece here. Because back to that center conversation, it's going to be a lot of talk around this team, especially if they continue to win here. Do you need more at the 5? And I think that's almost a no-brainer right now if you are trying to make a long playoff push here. I mean, let's say it's Detroit-Boston round 1, and it's going to be Cade and Minot against that front court. There's only so much you can do there. And they schemed it up great. They coached it up great in that game. But you knew walking in the door to all 3 of those matchups between Boston and Detroit that you're losing the rebounding battle. And particularly in a playoff environment, that's tough. So I imagine that they're only going to make long-term moves that help them here when it comes to the trade deadline. But given how packed the standings they are, whether they can hang in there over the next couple weeks, I think is going to be a significant factor in what direction they take at the deadline here, because so much of it, I feel like, is going to be dictated by the financial situation of this team. Obviously, over the summer, they had to make a lot of moves, including letting Luke Cornett go, that were just a product of the luxury tax situation as well as the second apron.
So I think the most likely scenario is their most likely move is to cut costs and reset everything and maybe move on from Simons at the deadline. Because as we talked about, it doesn't really feel like he's fit in. I do think, obviously, you're going to see where you're at, because who knows, like, if Derek White or Jaylen Brown has to miss 2 weeks, like even Peyton Pritchard at this point, even Kada, right? Like you miss one of those guys, one of those 4 players for multiple weeks, I do think you're in trouble of you falling out of this thing, because you mentioned how bunched up the standings are. So I think that's the most likely scenario. But if I'm Brad Stevens and my group continues to stay healthy and Tatum's return is on the horizon, and Tatum, to your point about the rebounding, he's arguably the best non-center rebounder in the entire NBA. I mean, that's one of the most underrated parts of his game. But you look at the East, you say, all right, Detroit's a really good team. They could win the conference. The Knicks are kind of what we expected them to be. They can win the conference, but I kind of feel decent about that matchup if you're getting Tatum back, and obviously get to see what he looks like. Toronto, I'm not a believer in, even if I think their coach does some cool stuff. I think Orlando's rounding into form, so that's a threat. So those are 3. Philly's pretty good, right? I mean, Embiid's not the same guy. Maxi's having a great year. George has quietly been pretty good since coming back from the injury. I don't know what's going on in Cleveland. Like that situation, the fact that they're 7th right now, with everybody expecting them and the Knicks to be competing for that top spot. And then Atlanta's dealing with all these injuries. They're dealing with the Trey situation. Unfortunately, we all know what's going on with Porzingis again, which just stinks to see. But I think you could convince yourself and new ownership Do they want to go for it right away? If you're looking at it and you're Bill Chisholm and company, you say, wait, here we are, and say we're approaching the trade deadline, and they're still in the top 6, and you're saying, hey, we get the Tatum guy back. I know, like, the teams in the West, like, I don't think, as currently constructed, the Celtics can beat OKC in a series. I don't think it's currently constructed they can beat Denver in a series. I think Houston would be a very difficult matchup for the Celtics because of the size. I think they could overwhelm the Celtics on the boards, right? One of the Celtics' biggest weaknesses.
By the way,
but
what a rant by Ime the other night. Quick aside.
That guy's intense, man. Remember when he was talking crap to LeBron? Remember that, where he's like going at LeBron? I think it was last year or the year before.
He said 2 refs shouldn't be out there, and the other was starstruck. That was unreal.
Yeah, he certainly set the culture there. But my point being is, I do wonder if, like, ownership, because I think the smart thing would be, hey, let's put their best roster together for next year. I feel like it's a win this year when Tatum's been out that you discovered what Walsh can do, and to a lesser extent what Ugo can do and what Kata can do. Like, I think it's a major win for the Celtics just because of those things, and Jalen getting even better than he already was. I didn't know there was another jump for Jalen offensively. I think that from that perspective, the season's a win as long as the majority of these guys can stay. Like, if you had some kind of crazy injury, that would stink. But I think for the most part, it's a success. So I think what I would do is look at moving Simons, especially if Missoula is going to play him the way that he has, and getting off that contract. And I know it's an expiring at the end of the season. I think that's what I personally would do. But we know the NBA, like, you got a new owner. He may want to get into this if they look at it and they sit Joe and Brad down. They say, you guys think you could win the East with Tatum? Like, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that they could convince, like, if they asked Brad and Joe would say, yeah, I think we could win it without him. But I think with Tatum, you could convince yourself that you could. If you're in the West, I don't think you even consider it. But the fact that you're in the East, I think you probably will. I don't think, by the way, let me just say on the record, I don't think they're going to make a big move. I think they'll trade Simons and that's it.
Yeah, I think back to the 2021 deadline, and they were in a tax situation back then too. There's a lot of parallels between this year and 2021. Not perfect, but enough that I think you can look at a situation then where you traded Tice, who was great, starting center on that team, beloved player, in a bit of a salary dump while also taking on Evan Fournier as the needed shooter position of weakness on that team as you were trying to develop Tatum and Brown. Again, different goals back then. Felt like coming off an East Finals, you were trying to stay above water and fight for that again. Wasn't in the cards with the health situation of Kemba and some others on that roster. This time around, you're trying to get through to the Tatum return, and that will play a big role here. And, it's so weird that we're in this spot now, but we are 7 months into the recovery. And so you are talking about 4 to 8 weeks here where you're almost going to be on daily watch of how's he responding to this next step in his progression. Does he get clearance for some 5-on-5 contact work over the next month here? Because once you get to the 9-month mark, that's where Drew Smith was back on the floor for the Heat at the start of this season after tearing his Achilles that much prior. Isaiah Jackson returned only because of the timing, 10 months after tearing his Achilles. Those guys had training camps. Those guys had ramp-ups through a preseason. So it's a different situation here where Tatum's just going to be jumping into games. But it does feel like the timeline at this point, particularly with all the things we've talked about, the kind of surgery, the timing, how much he wants to get back, does make me feel like he could build a decent runway to the playoffs. Let's say it is early March. At that point, it's going to be just approaching the 10-month mark for him in this recovery. We had a doctor on the other day who pretty much said up to a year, you are going to be reducing that risk of re-tearing the Achilles every month up to a year. And the year is that sweet spot to miss in terms of that risk, because then it pretty much goes down to zero. But he's obviously someone who wants to be part of this team this year, get back. He has said he's not going to happen until 100%. So we're going to see here. I mean, I could see this going in either direction. I do think we'll see some amount of Tatum this year. I think they're going to be extremely cautious about when he returns. And then if it is right up against the playoffs, you're going to end up in a very difficult position where he will be limited. He will not be himself right before the playoffs whenever he returns. And you're going to have to balance reintegrating him with whatever the goals of the team that's been there all year have been. And listen, 50% of Tatum will still be a massive plus for their rotation, whatever role he ends up in at that point. But it could get a little awkward. I mean, the last day of the regular season is the 11-month mark of him tearing that injury, which could be when he's ready to go here, depending on how all the circumstances go. I also don't think from a fan perspective, anyone would be surprised if you just look up, given who he's been through in his career and where he's at, and be like, what, like he's ready in February? What's going on here? I don't expect that, but I don't think anyone would be surprised. Do you think we'll see him this year?
I think we will. I just feel like all the momentum is pointing in that direction. I mean, you mentioned it, like the timing. It just so happened that the best Achilles surgeon was in New York, and he's like the first documented guy that got it done 12 hours after, or prior to 12 hours after tearing it, like less than 12 hours, I should say. I don't know why that was so difficult for me to illustrate there, but all the videos that come out, some of the posts that he himself puts out there, I just feel like they're creeping towards at some point he's going to return. And like, I trust the Celtics where they're not going to put him, because they know what this year is about, right? We saw the guys that were traded in the offseason when we're talking about Drew, and Al left in free agency, although Al, it's not like he's done much in Golden State, unfortunately. But even a guy like Cornette, they have to like go because of the CBA, and Drew Holiday's gone. Like, they know what this year is primarily about. And so I don't think they'd put him at like, try to like, it'd be one thing if you had the core back from last year and you're like, hey, here we are, 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. We get Tatum back. We feel really good about making another run. So it's different in that sense. But at the same point, like if he wants to play and the medical team says he's good, his guys say he's good, and he feels good, I don't know how you could convince yourself or him that it's not worth coming back. And again, this would be a totally different conversation too if the Celtics were in the lottery, right? Then it would make no sense to bring him back. But the way that the
So you think where they're at's going to dictate it to some degree?
I think it will. I really do. And look, maybe at some point, like even if they were a lottery team, maybe he says like, remember when Paul George broke his leg and Indiana was out of it and they brought him back just for a couple of games to get his feet wet at the end of the season because he wanted to like knock off some of the rust. Maybe that situation presents itself even more. But if you have an opportunity to get into the playoffs and you're a top 6 team, I do think that dictates it a little bit too. I think that would motivate Tatum more as well. But I'm with you in terms of, I do think, and I'm not starting a Jalen Tatum thing again, all right? I mean, people did that for 5 years, it felt like. But it is going to be kind of weird, right? Because Jalen's clearly become the alpha on the team. He's been one of the most prolific scorers in the NBA this year. I mean, all these 30-point games. It is going to be kind of weird.
I think it becomes weird next year. I almost think it's actually nice that Tatum's going to have to get his feet under him. He's going to have to slowly ramp up, get his confidence back, all that stuff. And it's going to help him to get the opportunities playing off Jalen, which should be how it goes, given the circumstances, at least this year. And being freed up from what's going to be a lot of defensive attention on Jalen. And then, ever since we've had this conversation about Jalen Jason, that benefit anyone should be able to acknowledge is the fact that you can play both of them in rotation and have pretty much one of them on the floor at all times, which is what this team's missing right now, along with his rebounding, along with his defensive versatility, along with the shooting. Just go down the line. And if he, again, is even 50 to 80% of himself, it's going to be a massive improvement on some of the other guys that they're playing right now. And it'll be interesting to see how they go through some of the rust. Does he have to miss a game here or there? The earlier he can get back and the more runway they have to the playoffs, I think will be helpful to actually putting him in a good position to impact this team in the playoffs. If he's ready during the playoffs, I think that's a tough spot to get reacclimated into, and get your legs under you and ease into things. It's not the spot to do it. I can't even think of anyone who has done that, at least from a significant injury, never mind an Achilles. So I do think if he's not ready to go by the time the playoffs start, that's probably where you shut him down and call it a year and kick it to the fall. And, at that point, you don't have the long-term concerns as well here. So It'll be interesting to track here. We do have a couple of practices this week ahead of the Heat game on Friday. We'll see if we get some more B-roll, some tape of Tatum, which obviously gets people excited every time that they see it there. And it is nice that he's let the public into the rehab process here too, with a lot of the film that he's put. He said soon, Brian. I don't know when soon is, but I don't know. It's fun. I knew this was going to be part of the season, and it has definitely played out the way I thought it would in terms of just the constant fixation on when he's going to be back. Joe can't stand it.
I can imagine that would aggravate Joe. I can't imagine
Yeah.
Joe answering hypothetical questions, like answering hypothetical questions that he doesn't have the answers to. I'm sure that doesn't make him happy. 3 quick points on the Tatum thing. First point is, I got to imagine Deuce is getting the most sleep he's ever gotten in his life.
I haven't even seen him. A couple games, yeah.
He's probably sleeping like crazy. Number 2 point is, he's got to come back, and I would expect they've already determined when he does come back, it's going to be at home, because the Garden crowd is maybe he wants a road one just to warm up, so he's got one under his belt.
He
so when
did
comes
say
back,
home. He said he's going to
said
make
home?
it at home.
Okay,
yeah.
So that introduction is going to be insane. And then the third thing, and this is just a personal request from me, that at some point this season we see a lineup on the court of Tatum, Jalen, Walsh, Ugo, and Derek White. 4 wings, and Derek White plays up at times. 4 wings and Derek White. Like, that would just be mayhem to have, like, the 2 scorers, an elite shooter in Derek White, the 2 scorers in Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and then just these pit bulls just running around the place, aggravating everybody on the other team. That's the lineup I want to see more so than any other lineup when Tatum comes back. I think that would be the funnest lineup we could possibly. And I feel bad not putting Pritchard in this, but I want the big guys in there.
Pritchard, 6 man. That's what we'll be back to at that point. I have one more question before we let you go here, Brian. Obviously,
you think it will be Pritchard, by the way? You think Pritchard will go to the bench or Walsh?
It'll be Walsh.
Yeah.
I don't know, though. Maybe Tatum comes off the bench.
Yeah, maybe he does.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe he does. Easier to manage like a minutes limit that way.
Yeah, and then it doesn't cause a stink with the starters if this lineup does continue to be successful going forward. So I could totally see that. Then you figure out what you're doing next year. And again, I think despite some gripes we have with recent losses and maybe some low points on the schedule here, it's a great start to this year given the circumstances and everything that they've had to go through here. Where do you think they're going to end here? Has the start changed your thinking at all? Has this recent stretch changed your thinking on where they're going to finish in the standings ultimately?
The fact that they're 4th in offense right now, but they were number 1 in the offense for a stretch there. Obviously, Denver over the past month and change is number 1, and the Celtics are number 2. I think that will dip off a little bit just because some of the crazy shot making, like Jalen's effective field goal percentage is 54.8%. His expected is 50%. So he's almost out shooting his expectation by 5 percentage points. I think some of that is real. He's just a great shot maker, but I do think the offense will dip a little bit. One of my biggest issues with the offense is, look, I know they don't get to the free throw line much. They're not going to score a ton of points in the paint. It's great. I think one positive recently has been Jalen getting to the free throw line more, despite he only being 7 of 14 and missing 2 critical ones. I think it's good that he's getting there because nobody else on the team does. But I don't know how this team only takes 6.5 corner threes per game, the fewest in the NBA. When they take the most threes, I don't know how they take the fewest corner threes. That's something that I don't know how they get to it, but that's something they got to get to more. But to answer your original question, I think they're going to remain similar to where they've been all season long defensively, which isn't great, but the way the offense has been, it's been good enough. I think they end up, even if it's like a play-in spot, I think they're somewhere between where they are right now and the 9th spot, because it tails off after 9. I think that's and look, maybe Atlanta falls off too. I'm not sure if that team can. Jalen Johnson's awesome, but I don't know if they can sustain all the stuff that they've gone through.
For sure. You got Porzingis situation there stinks. He's going to miss the next couple of weeks with the illness that has ailed him since May. Who knows what they're going to end up doing. The East is fascinating. They got Miami on Friday. It is crazy when you think of how they've produced their offense, the Celtics, when you think of the center situation where it's at. So much of the stuff we're asking, is it sustainable here? But they've made it sustained through the first quarter of the season through Jalen's greatness, good coaching, scrappy defensive efforts on different possessions to try to steal turnovers and just maximize every little aspect, every small piece of the game here. Our co-host John here on the Garden Report has made the Joe Belichick comparison a few times, just in terms of identifying all the little things you have to do to win a game and just obsessing over those details and getting every little bit you can out of those small areas of the game. And I think that's exactly what the Celtics have done this year, despite, I already see it in the chat, gripes about Joe and threes and everything else that has earned him criticism, rightfully so in spots. Wasn't a great series against the Knicks, but I think Joe's been awesome to start this year. And I do have the Celtics finishing around 5-6 in the standings. I think they will be above that play-in line. Obviously going to be interesting to see what kind of developments happen with the roster, with health, the rest of the way. Games are going to ramp up fast and furious again here. Like I said, Heat Celtics on Friday. We got practice coverage tomorrow from the Auerbach Center. Celtics trying to shake a 2-game losing streak here. Check out Brian Barrett off the pike talking Patriots, who lost their winning streak. Red Sox, who haven't done a ton yet. And the Celtics slumping a little bit here too. I feel like whenever you're on the show, Brian, it's a down time for Boston sports at the moment.
I know. I'm like a curse, man. Whenever I come on, it's like a bad thing's going on with the Celtics.
Overall, though, good year, though. Coming out of 2025, Red Sox back on their feet. Patriots get rolling in the biggest way possible. And Celtics, despite what went wrong at the end of their last season, look like they have some hope going forward here. So, I don't know. Bruins have been decent, too. Just shout out to them.
It is crazy, though, because it's the first time in a long time where a Celtic isn't the biggest star in town, right? Because it was Brady for so long.
They passed Tatum.
Yeah, I think he has, just for the relevancy, right? Because of the fact that, look, he plays in the NFL, and I mean, until last weekend, he was one of the top 2 favorites. He still is, but I mean,
what's your big 5 right now? What's your leaderboard?
So I'd probably have Drake May number 1, and I think you got to put the 2 Celtics 2 and 3 when we're talking about Tatum and Jalen, despite the fact that obviously Tatum dealing with the injury. I'd probably still put you have to put Jalen ahead right now because of the season and really, like, this went from a team that could have been what most people predicted to be a lot outside of this city, I should say. Most people outside of the city thought this is a gap year and this was a lottery team. So I'll put Jalen second, I'll put Tatum third. And then I think 4 is Crochet after what he did in Yankee Stadium and the year that he had. He's the runner-up in the Cy Young. Roman Anthony, I'd consider 5. And then I think Pasternak. So I don't know who, like, do you kick Anthony in to put David Pasternak there? Because obviously this has been a surprising year for the Bruins. I mean, Geeky's been incredible from a scoring perspective, but if you're putting a Bruin in there, I think it's probably still going to be Pasta, considering how long he's been here and he's still having an outstanding season. But
Roman caught some real fire late last season. Crochet,
that was ridiculous.
Productivity wise, for sure. I don't know. I think we're talking about like perception, popularity, that sort of thing, notoriety in the city. The Red Sox are still trying to get that back a little bit, despite the playoff push that they had. There's still no playoff games at Fenway since 2021. That's when it's going to shift, I think, when you get some of those. I'm excited for Red Sox season, even though they've done nothing.
What's an interesting conversation is who's the best coach / manager, right? Because obviously Marco Sturm in year 1, the Bruins have overachieved, I think, from what most people expected. But you have Vrabel, who's been to an AFC championship game, of course. Core has won a World Series, just made it back to the playoffs. And obviously Missoula has won an NBA championship. And now I think, like, if this season continues the way that it has, I think this is a major mark for Missoula, like, in the resume.
For sure. And he's the champion among that group, right? You get credit for that. Oh, Core, yeah, a long time ago. I feel like this is the second Core stint. I think we'll separate that.
True, yeah.
Even though I do love Core.
Yeah, he did miss a year.
Yeah, I'm a huge Core proponent and thought he did a great job last season. He's Brian Barrett. Again, check out the Off the Pike podcast over there on the Ringer. Check out the Garden Report stream. You can subscribe and get the audio version of this over on wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, subscribe to CLNS Media for all the interviews over at practice and after every game, post-game show live on Friday. We're back at it. Check out the Celtics All Access page for an inside look at the team. Patriots Press Pass for your Patriots coverage over here, and Bruins Rinkside for all your Bruins coverage. Quick shout out again to Prize Picks. Thanks to them. Go over there, use the code CLNS to get $50 lineups after you play your first $5 lineup, and probably be back checking in some way this week. So stay subscribed to the channels. CLNS Press Pass as well. You're going to get some press conferences over there, so I would go subscribe to that channel as well for all the press conferences across the different Boston sports. And as you see in the chat here, Kwani Sherrod, Gary Washburn, streaming, talking Celtics, talking NBA, Big Three podcast starting right now. So we will sign off here. Good night, peace, and talk to you later in the week.